Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Build Your Path podcast. Y'all, I am here with one of the coolest people I think I've ever met at a networking event. And if you know me, then you know I absolutely hate networking events. But Michelle made it a little bit easier and a little bit more fun when we met a couple months ago. Michelle, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Michelle Schwartz. I work for PVB Masonry Services, which is a subsidiary of Potomac Valley Brick. I am currently the mule sales rep for PVB Masonry Services. And yeah, I had a great time talking with Emma at that. It was a NAWIC Tri-Chapter event, which was the first time ever we'd ever done anything like that. So it's pretty cool. It's got to meet a lot of cool people.
Yeah, I think NAWIC is one of the things that, so it's the National Association of Women in Construction, right? Association.
Yep.
So, and that has been, as a kind of budding woman in construction, it has been the coolest experience. I actually went to another networking event and looked around and was like, oh, wait, I forgot that it's a predominantly male field because NAWIC had made it feel so inclusive and exciting.
Yeah, it's so cool to be, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, no. It's so cool. What I love about NAWIC is just like the community of women from all aspects of construction. So you're not just going to get your industry specific, like people, you'll get people like, for example, where I'm in masonry, but I'll get to meet, electrical and lumber and carpentry and HVAC and GCs and architects and stuff like that. So you kind of get like almost a macro view of the construction industry just by meeting the women in those groups, which is like so cool because you maybe had tackling a problem within your own industry that somebody else has experienced in theirs, and then they can sort of relay like how to problem solve or how to handle yourself or, communication tips and tricks kind of thing, which is really what it's all about. And again, you forget that it's, women in construction only make up 10% of construction when you're in those kind of groups, just because of the camaraderie. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we love it when guys attend too, because we need male advocates, but like, but to be able to walk into a room and have a majority of women is unusual. And actually I took my boss to one of those events, actually, and he was one of two men out of like 40 women. And I had said to him, I was like, well, after we got done with the event, I said, how was it? And he goes, good. It was kind of weird, though. I was like, I felt awkward because I was only one of two guys. I was like, now you know how it feels when I enter every construction or enter a room in anytime we go anywhere, because that's not unusual for a woman in construction. So it was just, being able to give that perspective kind of thing. So that's sorry, a little rant about
I think that's really cool. Yeah. I think it's really cool to be able to turn the tides a little bit. I mean, that's what, equality is, right? Is looking at the other side and understanding it and how you can uplift people in your industry, not about gender or sexuality or anything like that. So I think that that's so, so cool. Okay. So, but we do have to backtrack. What do you do? No, you have a boss. All right. You go to NAWIC events. What is your job in the construction industry?
So I am actually the mule sales rep for PVB Masonry Services. And what the mule is, it's an acronym for Material Unit Lift Enhancer. So to give some background, the mule is for gray block or cinder block, and the standard cinder block size is 16 inch in length. There is now several manufacturers around the United States that make a 32 inch long block. So basically you're doubling the weight of that block, and those units become very heavy. So for example, a standard I might get a little too technical here. Just let me know if I do. An 8/8/16, which means it's 8 inches long by 8 inches tall and 8 inches wide by 8 inches tall and 16 inches wide, is now weighs roughly about 36-ish pounds. And an 8/8/32 weighs about 66 pounds. So what would happen is that would become basically a two-man unit because of just, they can power through it, but like, again, you want to save your guys and their careers and stuff like that. So what the mule does is it helps lift the block. It basically makes that block weightless so that the mason doesn't have to lift the block. So if you think similar to like the arcade that picks up the stuffed animals and, you know, you win a prize or whatever, it's similar motion. But you win a block every time, obviously, and the mason isn't lifting the block. So why this is important is if a mason is laying block and he's laying roughly 125 8/16, that's per day. That's equivalent to basically a F-150, a pickup truck, and weight. Just in that day, just in block alone. That doesn't include mortar, that doesn't include rebar, that doesn't include any of the other materials that he might be lifting. And then if you calculate that over the course of the year, taking off rain days and other stuff, but if he roughly lays block about 200 days per year, that's 986,000 pounds per year one man is lifting. So over a 40-year career, the man is almost lifting 40 million pounds. So that's very heavy work for a single person to do. So what the mule does is it alleviates having to lift that block. And so there's a reduction in shoulder injuries, there's a reduction in back injuries, there's a reduction in fatigue, which I'm sure being part of construction, fatigue is a huge factor. For production, because I always like to say it's very hard to quantify how tired somebody is. And so somebody may be great on Monday, but they're dead dog tired on Friday, and you're just not going to see the same level of production from them. I mean, it's just a given. So that's why the mule is a great asset to a job site for block, because it alleviates that fatigue. And with that fatigue alleviation, there's a whole slew of other factors. And then also they theoretically can increase production, because now instead of laying one block at a time, they're theoretically laying 2 blocks at a time. So I'm the mule sales rep for that. Or I'm the sales rep for PV cool. Services. Yeah, sorry for the long ramble on that, but I think it's
I'm going to insert a video of it because I think it's so cool. The way that it works. I think it was on social media somewhere. So if you want to find, we'll talk about her social media at the end of this if you want, but Michelle's socials have really cool videos on them of the mule working. Mm-hmm. And I liked that you said, you were like, I'm not a mason, but I feel like one when I can do this.
Well, so like my whole thing we talked about earlier, you had mentioned empathy. To have empathy, you have to have perspective. So my whole thing is I could never say that I'm a mason. I am not out on the job site laying brick and block all day, sun up to sundown, and from 10 degrees to 110 depending on the temperature, right? But I can get a small appreciation for what they're doing just by mimicking it in a warehouse, which I know sounds really silly, but after lifting roughly, we're going to say 10 block is 360 pounds, my hands hurt. I'm not accustomed to that environment. So if I can use the mule and I can feel the small appreciation, I can only imagine what it feels like on a job site when you are being, beaten by the sun and you're hot and you're tired from a hard day's labor. What that can do. And so that's my only thing is to understand their mindset. I needed to take a step back and sort of mimic what they do in the real world in my warehouse. And so that's why I use the mule, because the other thing is, if I'm going to offer training, I need to know how to use it. That's all there is to it. I don't want to, for lack of a better way to say this, BS them when it comes to training. It's all about having those relationships and building that respect with each other. So I need to come with a little street cred, we'll say, with explaining how to use it. So
the construction industry, I think, requires a lot of street cred. I always say that when I'm talking to young people about getting into the industry, is like, have you been in a team sport? Like, do you work well with other people typically? Like, those being able to have that personable skill set and have the empathy and learn about another person and work with them, I think is crucial. And you've talked to me a little bit about how masonry is especially sort of an inside job. Talk a little bit about the culture of masonry.
Well, so I will say that I am nowhere near an expert, and I would say I'm a novice to the masonry industry. I've only been in the industry for 2-ish years, 2.5 years. I masonry, you got to figure how old are the oldest bricks? 6,000 years old, roughly. That means we've had bricklayers for around 6,000 years. So it's a very, I mean, we always joke that we're one of the oldest trades in the world because we are.
Yeah.
And so what I love about the guys is how tough they are, how like what you would say old school. I mean, because they're doing a very hard job. It is the tools of masonry have not really changed, right? They're still using a trowel to lay mortar, and they're still using a hammer to break brick. I mean, some of them will use saws and things like that, but you still use a hammer to break brick and block. So even though time has progressed, the inherent strength that comes from this industry hasn't really changed. And that's really what I love about working in this industry is the history and the strength of the people in it. And I used to be an ironworker. I built stick framed and pre-engineered metal buildings all over like the South and Texas and stuff like that, which was really cool. And I thought ironworkers were tough, but masons are up there. They're really cool. I haven't come across anybody I don't really like because they're all just they're down to earth.
Real.
And they're just good people. So that's what I love about the industry. But one of the things about the industry is that it's kind of everybody knows everybody, which is, I mean, yes, that happens in construction. It ends up being a very small world at the end. Yeah. But masonry in and of itself is really cool in the fact that they talk about their companies and generations. So, which is really cool. I had never come across that before, but it's not uncommon to hear that this company is 4th or 5th generation. This company is 2nd or 3rd, which is really cool. And that sort of lends it back to like, the longevity and the history that goes along with being in masonry. So, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. So
I sat down with someone who runs a historic trades program, and we were talking about the impact of history as you're creating the thing in construction, and how special that is. So masonry is a cool, right? You're using historic things that have come from a long time ago. Electrical could only come from so long ago, right? So you're using those skills and that sort of ancestry, but also working with innovation, working on new buildings. So if you loved the historic trades podcast episode, but you weren't super sold on learning how to be a historic trades person, maybe masonry is something that you might want to get into. So go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, I was going to say there's actually part of being a bricklayer, there are the people who do new construction, but there is a whole historic trades aspect to it. Brick matching is a thing because, if a building is built in the 1800s or whatever, the brick is not in production by the same manufacturer. I mean, or is, different. It will have be a different color variation because they're mining, all these different things. So it's cool if you like puzzles, historic preservation is probably a good avenue just because there are so many factors that go into having to brick match and that kind of stuff. I mean, even the mortar is different in composition now than it was back then. So having to have all that knowledge kind of stuff. Actually, I was talking to a friend who works at a local masonry contractor here, and she was saying that they found brick. They were doing renovation on a building. They found brick with cat paws in it because they used to make brick on site. Yeah. Like at the 18th century, turn of the century, they would make brick on site. And so there had been a cat that had walked across. And so she was like, we kept that brick. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. So
I think that's awesome. Yeah. I think I saw that too. And that kind of history, the stories happen right, every single site has some little thing, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them get lost in time, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they're rediscovered because there's a cat
Mm-hmm.
paw on a brick.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. I know.
I love
It's
it.
pretty cool. Yeah.
No, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So so tell me a little bit about how you got into this mule sales rep role, like from being a tradesperson yourself. How did all that, and then how did you become a tradesperson in general? I need to hear your whole history of how
Okay.
you ended up here.
So I graduated high school in 2003, and took a couple years off because I didn't know what I wanted to do. But
Which,
I
by the
was
way,
of
no one does. When you
No one does.
graduate high
But no
school,
one talks about that. No
no
one
one does.
talks about how, and actually, that's what I was going to say. I was of the generation where it was either go to college or you're a failure. Those were your two options, or join the military if you really didn't know what you were doing. But it was go to college or you basically there's no other path, right? It was go to college or fail. So I took a couple of years off to try and figure out what I wanted to go to college for, because college was not cheap, still is not gotten any cheaper. I had moved out to California to just like, I had family out there, but I also just sort of try to figure out like whether or not I wanted to live out there, kind of thing. And I ended up going to, in the time that I had moved out to California, my mom had moved to West Virginia. And she's like, come back home. There's a university right near where I live. And I was like, okay, cool. So I ended up moving to West Virginia and went to Shepherd University. Got my degree in environmental sustainability with a minor in physical science with an emphasis in geology, and then graduated, and there were no jobs. They either, I think I applied to like, I don't know, this is going to sound ridiculous, but like 400 jobs in that
Sure.
first year. Meanwhile, I was like bartending and serving because like that's what you do, right? And I was trying to find a job, and they either wanted a master's, a PhD, and I had suffered my way through school. I enjoyed the classes that were my degree, but anything like the gen eds was not a fan.
Yeah.
Had a hard time with them, to be perfectly honest. And so finally I just like scraped by to graduate, because at that point I had invested all that money and needed to get the degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I graduated, there really wasn't anything around. And so what ended up happening is, through like a friend of a friend, I found out they were looking for laborers for building stick framed and pre-engineered metal buildings. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, no problem. Why not? Why not? I'm not doing anything now, so why not just travel over the road doing that? And so that's what I did. It was basically Arkansas, North Carolina, Texas, parts of Virginia, Tennessee. And I did that for about 2.5-ish years, and loved it. But we worked sun up to sundown,
Mm-hmm.
and 16-hour days would be a lot. And we would build like storage compounds. So it would be anywhere from like 2 to 5 buildings. And so what would ended up happening, and we're only a 4-man crew. And so what ended up happening is we would work anywhere from, 3 weeks to 2.5 months every single day, sun up to sundown. Yeah. 7 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we would take 2 weeks off, and then we would repeat it. And so I got tired of that lifestyle after a while. The Texas sun is very hot, and yeah. So, but I loved it. Like, I loved all aspects of the construction. I got tired. And so I came back home to West Virginia for a little bit, worked, decided I'm not doing the construction thing anymore. I love it, but I'm not doing, I want something steady and stable and whatever. And so I ended up working at the casino in Charlestown, West Virginia, and worked my way up to a revenue audit assistant manager. Basically, we tracked the flow of money through the casino, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
And then COVID hit, and I was out of work for 3.5 months. And I was like, I'm not going to be part of a non-essential industry again. That's just the choice I'm going to make now. I hated sitting at home. It was horrendous. I mean, all the things with COVID, obviously, but like being isolated like that was very hard. So I looked for a job and I started working at Serve Pro as a water mitigation crime scene cleanup technician. Did that for a little bit, and then I had a mutual friend reach out. They were looking for a basically a project coordinator at a local masonry contractor up in Sterling. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And so I did that for a little bit, lots of experience. It was actually pretty cool. I didn't know the difference between like a brick and a block when I first started there. So they taught me a lot. They taught me a lot about brick construction and just masonry, obviously, in general. They allowed me to explore, my interest there. And then PVB was hiring for the mule sales rep, and I was like, technology and construction and bricks and things, absolutely, that sounds amazing. So I applied for that, and I've been here about a year and a half almost. So
so cool,
and it's wonderful, and I love working here. This company is fantastic. They're fantastic, and
that is, I feel like you were the poster child for the construction industry and opportunity. I really think so, because you have all these personality traits and like all these things that you wanted, right? And so you did the traveling thing for a little bit because you wanted some adventure.
Yeah,
and then you're like, okay, too much adventure. and then you went into something else.
Mm-hmm.
And then you came back to us and found the coordinator, and then now for sales. So you're able to put all of that together.
Mm-hmm.
I just think when you think of construction, you think of the person laying the brick, not the person selling the machinery to then lay the brick, or the person who coordinated the way that. I just think it's so cool. And I think it's so special how everyone's path winds fabulously to bring them to where inevitably I meet them and interview them on my podcast.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, one of the things that, because I've talked to some schools before, and like, what the cool thing about Camp Nawick, which is what's near and dear to my heart, and I would do this every week if I possibly could. We have Camp Nawick, which is the all-girls camp for grades 7th through 12th, where we show them all aspects of construction. So they'll do a job site tour. For us, for our Camp Nawick, for the DC chapter, they're going to get they're learning like safety PPE, but they're also going to get some self-defense in there. We're building raptor houses for a local aviary. They're going to have a trades day. So we have a mason contractor coming in. They're going to build brick and block walls, and still looking for another one. And if you know anybody, I just, the thing about life paths is that you think that it stops after college, or you think that it stops after high school. Like if you don't have it figured out by 18 or 21, that somehow your life's just going to fall apart and drop off into the abyss. And that's just not the case. And the fact that, and I'm sorry, about to get a little bit on my soapbox, but like the fact that we try and force 18-year-olds and 21-year-olds into making their career paths when that's not even a quarter of their life, that to me seems like we're failing them in some way, just from my perspective. You know what I mean? Because that's a lot of pressure. They're the only environments that they have been in have been ones that have been without or beyond their control, right? They're either in school where things are being determined for them, or they're living at home where their parents are determining things for them. And yet we are forcing them to try and figure out where they're supposed to be at 18. Like, no, like that's just not, to me, reasonable nor fair, and a lot of pressure for them to not only cognitively have to deal with, but emotionally have to deal with. And so that's one of the things that I tell the girls in the camp, and when I go talk to schools, is like, you're not a failure if you don't know. If you don't know, at least you don't know, you don't know. You know what I mean? But you're not a failure for that. No one is at the end of the day, you're going to be the one paying your bills. You're going to be the one that's having to take care of you. And the only person who can determine whether or not you're failing at that is you. But if you're making all your ends meet, and you're doing what you need to do to progress yourself in a healthy and wholesome manner, you're succeeding. That to me in this day and age is succeeding, because it's hard. It's hard to get your own house now. It's hard to, basically make ends meet. And so I think we need to give the younger generation a little credit for, for just persevering through all of it, because it is hard. And then to add on top of to be in an industry where there's a very large pressure to get things done in a short amount of time or by a deadline, that's a lot of stress. It's just a lot of stress overall. So sorry to on that, but yeah,
it's 100% true. And had you not faced all of that pressure when you graduated high school, I think when our students like take a step back and really think it through, maybe they don't spend money on college and they're able to go into an apprenticeship without shame or without comparing themselves or whatever. I've been thinking a lot about how the only thing that really can ruin any growth that you have or anything that you earn is comparing yourself to other people who you think know what they want to do. They don't.
Yes.
I don't care that they're going to college to be a doctor. They have no idea if that's what they actually want to do.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are at 18. You don't know. You don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and if you have that passion, like one of the girls at our camp knows that she wants to be a structural engineer at 13. Great.
Okay. So cool. First off.
Yeah. Right. Her mom emailed me, was just like, she's interested in being a structural engineer. And I'm like, first off, women in STEM. Yes. Thank you.
Love that.
But also, how cool is it that you know what you want to do at 13? Me, on the other hand, I was like off in La La Land still.
But you don't know how much it took her to get there, or like if that's what she'll want to do when she's 40. Like, who knows?
You never know.
Comparing yourself is it's the most, I think, harmful thing you can do and I think when you graduated, and less now, I hope, there's a little less comparing when it comes to student. Like we really, I'm hoping that we're looking at each individual with their actual goals and interests. And a little less at like the numbers of who's going to college immediately after.
Well, and the other thing is I'm not against college. If you want to go to college, awesome, go for it. My thing is, what are you going to do after college? If you know you want to go to college, pick a career and then choose the degree based off of the career. Not what are you interested in? Because if you're interested in history, but you hate teaching, what else is it that you're going to do? If you like doing communications, what are you going to do on the end with that, $100,000+ college education? Because I was looking at University of Maryland. I think it's like $106,000 to go for 4 years or 5 years or whatever. That's a down payment on a house.
Oh, more than a down payment on a house. That's that's really absurd. Oh, yay. I would love that.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, y'all. We had an electrical issue. So we are back. And we are gonna start back up. So we talked about the problem, right? The problem is students are being forced to enter things that maybe they're not 100%, or they have no idea, which they don't have to know. But imagine you are 17 years old, you're looking back at your life, maybe you're 22, I don't know, and you're thinking about all the things that you, Michelle, were interested in, were learning about. What kind of things should students be paying attention to in their day-to-day life?
Well, so one thing, if they like hands-on kind of stuff, absolutely construction is the way to go. But like we said earlier, it isn't just the skilled trades aren't the only thing that's within construction, right? So I know for a fact we need marketing people. We need sales support. You need project managers. You need foremen. You need truck drivers. Like there's all this. We think about construction as just the trades, but there's a lot of support that comes along with that. And so honestly, I think anybody can make the industry, or like construction would basically be an industry that anybody could go into. It's just figuring out the job within that industry that they're interested in. So if you don't like sitting in a classroom, which would translate into not wanting to sit in an office, a trade might be an option for you. But also what might be an option is being a truck driver, or, working in a warehouse, or operations, all of those kind of things. If you start out, usually the cool part about construction is if you start out as just basically like entry level, which is like a laborer, just basically anything entry level, you can work your way up without having to have a college education.
Yeah.
That's, to me, what's really cool about construction. And then the other thing about skilled trades is after a while, you can start your own business. You don't have to have a business degree to start your own business. All you need is a LLC and a tax code, and you're good to go. So if you, are doing electrical work for 5 or 7 years and you decide you want to branch out and run your own business, you can do that.
Right.
There's
and
nothing
who knows
stopping.
how far that could go.
And who knows how far that can go. And who knows, you can take that anywhere. So if you are in, the way that I always say is that if you don't know what you want to do, construction is a good opportunity to take to figure out what it is you do want to do, because you'll either hate it or you'll love it. And you can still get a college degree in the end, right? It's being young and strong accounts for a lot. And if you decide after 10 years of working in construction, you no longer want to do construction, you no longer want to be in the field, you're only 28. You can go to college super easily while working in an office environment. And the skills that you'll have learned from construction are attention to detail, problem solving, communication, being able to handle stress and pressure, and those skills will be translatable to literally any industry. And they're the kind of soft skills that are very hard to teach. And you'll either, and by working in construction, you'll have to learn them just because of the type of job, no matter the aspect of the industry that you enter, that you're going to need that kind of stuff. That's the thing. Those are the things that'll set you apart. And so I always say, if you don't know what you want to do, go into construction, because or come into the construction industry just because you'll get paid pretty well. They'll want to pay you to train you, or they'll pay you to train you. And then if you really want to go to college in the end, it'll still be there, rather than taking 4 years and then figuring out by the time you graduate, just kidding, that's not what I want to do anymore. Yeah. So and you might be able to afford it on your own. With if you work in, if you do construction, you can save up, get all your ducks in a row, and then go to college. So but yeah.
I think construction has so many awesome paths. Even you now, right? You're working with technology, which maybe 15 years ago you wouldn't have even thought that that's what you would be interested in or wanting to do. But there's so many. If you're interested in like IT or something, there's IT and construction.
There is.
And there's everything in
There's everything. Yeah, because because although the focus may be like we're in masonry, we still have an IT person on staff. We still have truck drivers on staff. We have yards, so we have forklift operators. We have counter sales reps, so people working with customers as they come into the yards, and then also dealing with delivery of brick to the yards and material and stuff so there are so many aspects beyond, and we aren't construction by definition of what everybody would think of, right? We're not a skill. We have masons on staff, but we are not a masonry contractor. But we still need, sales support. We still need purchasing. We still need operations. We still need all of these aspects, but you kind of need to know the industry to be able to do all of that too, right? We can't just stick you behind the desk selling brick and you're going to be able to pick out which brick is which brick when there's 2 red bricks sitting next to each other. You know what I mean? So it's just, I don't know. I love everything about construction. It's just it taught me a lot about myself. It taught me a lot about perseverance and fortitude that I don't think I would have gotten from any other industry. So
I'm with you. I think so. And I think it really can shape you into the adult that you're meant to be. And whether or not that adult is in the industry after 20, 30 years, then that whatever, we'll find that out. But I think it's a very shaping and communicative and really special industry.
If you take like, I'm pretty introspective, and so I don't think that I would have had the confidence to purchase a home without having done construction. And the reason I say that is because my ability to crisis manage should anything go wrong was built through having been on job sites and having to problem solve when the concrete wasn't level, and having to problem solve when your building's out of plumb, or, just small things like that. The magnitude of those problems helps translate to the magnitude of other problems, and giving you a perspective that allows you to be able to handle things you thought you wouldn't be able to handle. So, and also, you're using tools, you're using power tools, and that's a skill in and of itself. And, now I can hang my own drywall after watching, 15-minute YouTube video on how to hang drywall. But that's because I, installed metal panels when I was doing ironwork. And so I have the idea of, how to use how to use a power drill and stuff like that. That's all. So that's,
yeah. Well, and I think the confidence too, just being around things like that, I think builds a level of confidence. I'm doing the same thing. I just recently bought a house, and it's from 1901, and we've been renovating it and just like trying to fix it all up. And we refinished the floors on our own. And that was one thing that, like, she and I were really, I definitely felt that the construction industry had leveled me up, even though I've never worked in, I ran a trade school back in the day. But other than that, like, I've never been in the industry as I work in a nonprofit now, right? Like, there's all of that. But being around it and just feeling like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And if he can do it, I can do it. Then that, even just confidence, allowed me to take that YouTube video and like make it into a real thing.
And how good do you feel for that? Right?
Exactly.
Like, to me, I always joke that there's no sense of greater accomplishment than being able to step back and look at something that you've built or repaired or fixed, installed, whatever you want to say. But seeing a physical representation of your hard work, it's hard to beat that. It's really hard to beat that, because what you're going to say is, when you drive by a building you've built, I built that. I mean, they joke about that, but it's true. The tradesperson will be like, oh yeah, I installed these panels here, or I did the wiring here, or whatever, X, Y, and Z. But that's because you're proud of the work you've done. You know what I mean? And I don't think you'll get that hanging gift cards at Target. So that's why I say construction, even if you don't know what you want to do, construction.
I think so. And we have such a cool community.
Yeah. There, and that's the other cool. And the other thing that we also that sort of talked about, but not a lot, is the job site culture is very different than any other culture you're going to come across. The only thing I can equate it to is the military. I've had friends who have been in the military and then transition on into construction jobs, and you can get a very strong brotherhood there. But it is, it's a tough crowd. You gotta fake it till you make it if you don't feel confident about yourself, or be confident, because it is such a high pressure environment that you've got to know that you're not going to be able to walk in and just assume, like, be able to say, oh, I know how to do this. You're going to need to prove yourself. Whether right or wrong, you're going to need to prove yourself. And the quickest way for respect is to listen. So, and not know everything.
And what a great trait to learn.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
You will get farther in life. Well, what's that saying? Listen to understand versus listen to respond. So if you listen on a job site and you pick up what everybody is saying around you, you will become valuable. You'll be the person that everybody wants to work with. So,
yeah, in the job site, in the office, I think that that's translatable across the board.
It is. Yeah.
Well, and I was going to ask you what your advice is for a student or a young person entering the industry, but I think that's it.
Yeah. And honestly, that's pretty much it, is to perspective and listen. And the way you get perspective is by listening.
Yeah.
So, that's listen, and then know that it's okay if you don't know. Right. That's really one of my favorite quotes is, life either tests you by having everything happen at once or nothing happen at all. Right. And so if you don't know what you want to do, that's totally okay. You'll figure it out.
We're not worried about you here on the Build Your Path.
As long as you got you're making ends meet and you're doing needs to get done.
And you're being nice to people. Yes. Those are like my 3 things. Yeah. Is like, if you're adding to the world in some capacity, then we're good.
Yeah. I mean, that's, it's, again, there's a lot of pressure when you're 18 and to figure out what you want to do with life, but
you're going to make it.
Okay if you don't.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. Michelle, this was fabulous. Thank you so much for joining me on the Build Your Path podcast. Y'all, if you have any questions, ideas, anything, please drop a comment in either the YouTube or a review on Spotify, and find us on social media at Build Your Path. And buildyourpath.org also has a lot of resources on all different types of careers you might be able to find in the construction industry. So if you have any questions, ideas, concerns, anything, please feel free to reach out. Check it out at buildyourpath.org. Finally, team, let's dig in and build your path. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.